In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look here at this major coastal system that is going to be moving along the East Coast, bringing very strong winds, surprisingly strong winds, I should say, and also very heavy rainfall to certain locations. We're going to break this storm down on both of our major models, the European and the GFS model. Today, the GFS model decided to just go crazy. It actually shows a northeastern snowstorm. I really am going to urge you to not look too much into that. So we're gonna show it in today's video, but don't look too or think too deeply about that, because it is something that is a huge outlier and very, very unlikely to occur that way. But it does show the amount of cold air that this model shows, and it shows what is possible with that. So I think it puts it into perspective a little bit more than anything is the takeaway there. And it's good that I got on that topic, because cooler air, I don't expect frigid long-term, Arctic patterns to take place in the east. I don't expect any long-term major cooldowns at all, for that matter. But I do expect back and forth cooldowns, and I also expect that the general, I wouldn't say baseline, but the top end, the ceiling of these temperatures, we're kind of going between cool down and warm up, that is going to come down quite a bit. So even those warm ups are going to be a lot more fall-like than they've been for the past few weeks, which I think is good news for everybody. They're going to be a lot closer to normal when it is warming up. So we're going to discuss all of these things today. First off, going through the European model, again, mostly talking about this coastal system. Here is this evening. We do see some four corner states activity, and we also see that a lot of our activity here in the southeast is present right here. So this is where that low is going to originate from. So everything's kind of taking shape already. We're kind of in a very minor ridge in the west, trough in the east pattern. It's a little cooler today, you might have noticed. Friday the 10th, we start to see this coastal system gaining some steam. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, all seeing heavier precipitation there. Starting to take place. No major low taking off just yet, but it is kind of gaining steam, as we mentioned. Looking up at the northwest, down through into some of the Rockies and Four Corner states, there is plenty of heavier rainfall and shower areas happening in here. That is a pretty big impact that we're seeing for tomorrow on Friday the 10th. Saturday on the 11th, we start to see a low pressure center developing now finally with this coastal system, and we can tell that the precipitation is far spread. South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia seeing precipitation from this thing already by Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon and evening on the 11th. Out west, we continue to see activity, even some low pressure centers starting to get going all over the place. Even snowfall in the higher elevations out there is what this model is indicating. As we just keep on going, Sunday here on the 12th, this low gets a lot more major, 996 here, so it is dropping in pressure. We do see precipitation along the mid-Atlantic and southeast, but you might notice that this low is further offshore a little bit. It was originally much closer, probably 50, 100 miles there. So what we're looking at, somewhere in between that. As far as how much to the east it has moved on this model run, the GFS model has not shifted it, so this is more of a purely European model thing. It's ongoing. We do see the Northwest and Northern Rockies are seeing a pretty good amount of snowfall there by Sunday afternoon, October 12th. We do see a more major low up here north of North Dakota, and that's the driving force behind a lot of this. Even the Four Corner states are seeing some rising, more tropical downpours type situation starting to kind of unfold there. We do see a drier cold front here along this low and underneath it, and we can tell by looking at those red lines underneath. And we do see a bit of a warm front here out ahead of it as well. So this is really pulling up some warmer air into the central states by this point, and it is funneling in a lot of deep cold here into the Rockies. Again, areas seeing snowfall, and that will move into the northern plains for the most part. As we look at Monday, again, we do cool down. It's not as severe of cold as what the Northwest was seeing, but it is cooler than it was after that low moves through. And it is a weak cold front. This is not pulling Arctic air with it at all. It's mostly just cooling us down a little bit. So when we look at these red lines, you can see that it is dipped a little bit beyond the ridge just to the east, but not by a whole lot. By this point, the low is much closer to the coast. It kind of does like a wobble back towards the coast. And we do see, again, heavier precipitation and strong winds for the mid-Atlantic and southern New England by this point. As we keep going towards Tuesday, the 14th here, we do see out west lingering showers, even heavier precipitation for central California, even snowfall for the Sierra Nevada mountains. We do see some showery and thunderstorm activity there in the northern plains and upper Midwest by Tuesday the 14th. And by Wednesday here on the 15th, again, a little bit of showery activity, nothing crazy to talk about, so we're just going to glide past that. Thursday on the 16th, things start to get going around where those showers were. We have 1,000 millibar low pressure center there between South Dakota and Nebraska, and we can clearly see that warm front here, high precipitation. We can tell that it is ridging right there, but the cold front is rather low precipitation. It's probably trying to set up somewhere in here. It's a little bit more dynamic out west, so it is difficult until they break east of the Rockies. Northern Rockies, speaking of Rockies, and Sierra Nevada mountains are seeing snowfall with all of this activity, weak or low over California. And as we move towards Friday, we see this low weakens and heads off to Wisconsin, the one that was sitting nearby the Rockies, just in one day. It moves very, very fast. And then we have a new and now stronger low taking place there in eastern Wyoming with some Rocky Mountain snowfall, a little bit less of a dynamic system in this case. By Saturday here on the 18th on this particular model, we can kind of continue to see this northwest and kind of north central activity really, really persisting. The Gulf here, northern Gulf, starting to flow in some energy as we have mostly a ridge over the east by this point. So the flow, you can imagine, is generally northward for that warmer air to make it up further north. So that's why a lot of this activity is getting pulled on shore. And similarly, there's a more southern flow out west, and that's why we're getting a lot of this snowfall heading further southward into the mountains out west. Looking forward towards Sunday here on the 19th, there's multiple different things going on. We can see that there is a lot of showery activity, even heavier, more persistent rainfall, and even snowfall in the high elevations for the Pacific Northwest. And the Rockies are seeing, again, mixed showers, rain, and snowfall out there. And then, you can kind of pick it apart, but there is showers in other spots east of there, but they are quite minor by this point, Sunday the 19th. This is also the long range, so take everything from this point forward with a grain of salt, of course. Now, by Monday afternoon, weaker low over Illinois. Again, a little bit of a warm front trying to set up, a little bit of a cold front trying to set up. So this thing is getting kind of dynamic, which mostly, well, it does bring more interesting activity and more activity in general as far as precipitation, but mostly that's going to influence the temperatures. Again, talking about that flow, we see something like this. There's a helicopter outside my window, not literally right there, but it is out there somewhere. So if you hear that, please excuse it. The northwest here, we do see showers continuing. Also, northern Rockies seeing snowfall. Tuesday, the 21st, we do get more activity in the mid-Atlantic and northeast, which I love to see. Obviously, they need a lot of precipitation. If we could get another system out there at some point during like mid to late October, that would be for sure beneficial. And also interesting, by this point, the jet stream is almost what we call transient, where it's just kind of like completely west to east with hardly any dips and troughs or ridges. Wednesday, the 22nd, is very similar. Precipitation over the south central states, some of the north central, and then we do see that snowfall continuing for the Rockies. Thursday on the 23rd, it looks like something wants to come together here across the central states. Now heavier precipitation and probably thunderstorms here in the more south central areas being projected by this model. And then the northwest seeing more heavier precipitation moving in once again. Friday, the 24th, kind of validates my thoughts. We see some lower pressure building. It's not major by this point, but again, the precipitation is quite major. And I haven't said this in a long time, but I always tend to say this, where it's like a strong low doesn't always guarantee strong impacts, and a weak low doesn't always guarantee, little to no impacts. You can see more major impacts in a weaker system, and you can see hardly any in a stronger system. So this is one of those things where we're seeing more activity from this than the pressure would indicate, and that happens a lot. So I tend to use that quote a lot. A little bit more low pressure in the northwest as well. Heavier precipitation moving on shore of these areas, even snowfall in the high elevations, just like many days before that. Looking at the GFS model, I kind of want to get it like a cross comparison here, but we see that low forming over the areas offshore of the southeast Saturday the 11th afternoon. This is way different. This low is closer, a lot more precipitation onshore to these Carolinas and mid-Atlantic locations. And as we kind of just head overnight, that low is vastly different in location. We see a 994 over the Outer Banks, so this is bringing heavy precipitation much more inland. And the European model had that low like out here, so obviously that's like a 1 or 200 mile difference there. Certainly, again, vastly different in just the widespreadness of the impacts. Winds would be stronger, that low is closer, and also, again, just rainfall is way further inland. Sunday the 12th, we can see this thing is just riding across the Delmarva by this point, 996, so a little stronger, a little closer. Look out west as well, a lot more dynamic out here. Two very strong lows. I think on the European model, this one was rather strong, but this one was rather weak in comparison. The snowfall here is a lot more extreme as well because of that. So this is just like way more interesting than the European model. As we just kind of move forward, we do get into a like kind of quieter pattern, but we clearly by the Friday the 17th time frame have a major ridge out west and a trough over the east with this low. And this is just pulling in very cold air compared to normal for kind of like the beginning of next weekend. And look at Friday the 17th. Again, this is the part I told you not to think too hard about because the GFS, once we're beyond 7 days, does tend to show outlandish things. And when it's a complete outlier like this, like obviously we saw nothing like this on the European model, that really brings into question how valid this model is in this indication. So there is multiple reasons to suspect that this is way overblown. And, you know, it might be warmer with still a coastal system like this, or it might be cold like this without the coastal system. But for these things to match up perfectly, even in January and February, as we've learned in recent years, it takes a lot for that to line up. So to see this in mid-October is just crazy. Not to say it's impossible. I always say nothing's impossible in weather, but there is strong reason to doubt this. So with that being said, let's move forward with caution. Overnight, we start to see the Adirondacks, the Catskills, areas near the Finger Lakes in New York, the Green Mountains, the White Mountains, all seeing snowfall. 970 right near Rhode Island. This is just a crazy pattern. Again, very outlandish with a strong low here. This is like kind of dream material for the wintertime for people up there that love snowfall. This would just be the craziest setup for January, February, or December or something like that. But we do see plenty of snowfall for those higher elevations, even trickling into the Berkshires now. So getting towards those more like mid elevations. I know it's relatively high elevation, but for this time of year, that is very early for them. And this thing drops all the way down to a 967 millibar low pressure center. And you can kind of imagine this thing has a lot of influence over the pattern. And with this kind of counterclockwise flow, you can tell that on this western part, it's encouraging cold air to get pulled down because that low is so strong. So that's why we're getting this really fine area of much colder air moving down. And I mean, we see northern Pennsylvania, a lot of lower elevations in New York seeing snowfall. West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York here. I mean, this is just going off the charts, guys. As we keep going, that eventually moves out. After this, we also get a, first off, tropical cyclone in the Gulf around the 20th, 21st time frame. Very strong one as well that hits the Gulf Coast eventually, the panhandle of Florida there. We also get this little guy, 997. This is hours 336. Again, once we get beyond 7 days, this model tends to get crazy. When you're looking at beyond 10 days, this might even be around or beyond 15 days. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt. This should be obvious. 997 here, snowfall in the upper Midwest and Northern Plains, which for this time of year, if you don't live there, I guess I'll fill you in. It's not unheard of. And you know, October, November can bring snowfall to these north central areas. If you live there, you already know that. It isn't the most common thing in the world, though, so I still would take this with a grain of salt, obviously. If not for the fact that it's relatively rare, for just the fact that it's 3 hours, 336 hours out. And then it looks like we're moving into a really rainy pattern in the east as a whole here for the end of the model run, which of course would be great. But again, we are tremendously far out on this model run. Also snowfall for a lot of the northwest. Now, with all that being said, we just went over 2 models. Let's go into the precipitation for the European model, which is the first one. The West Coast does nicely, especially the Northwest Coast. The Rockies and a lot of the central states do really good as far as precipitation. And because of this coastal system, there's kind of a cutoff here, a pretty sharp cutoff, right around that Vermont, New Hampshire border with Massachusetts. And then kind of south of the Adirondack Mountains in New York. Something like this is that sharp cutoff where everything south of it along the coast, with the exception of southeastern Virginia, where I'm from, actually, on this model run, does really well as far as precipitation from this coastal system, even too well in terms of like flooding concerns because it's so much. But we can see greens along these coastal locations like the mid-Atlantic and southeast. But again, Virginia just brown right there. So, but the west, the Rockies, the north central, even some of the central are all above average precipitation here. Looking at the snowfall, on the European model, obviously we get a lot here in the mountainous west. We saw that throughout the model run. And then we even get some high elevation flurries, even North Dakota. This is kind of higher elevation in here, but still a little interesting. These areas get kind of like flurries to maybe even a dusting. But this is typical October stuff, not what the GFS showed. Now, temperatures. We're cooler right now, as I mentioned, in the east. You can see it there, warm in the west, and that's a large contributing factor. But by the time we're reaching after next weekend, we do get some colder air from our low that is offshore. But outside of that, it is cold in the west, warm in the east, pretty purely here. And as time goes on, that kind of just sticks around until we get this backdoor cold front, which, again, I kind of go over this all the time, but it's not coming from like the northwest like they typically do, or even like the north kind of west. It's just not as west. It's mostly coming like straight south, if not maybe like from the northeast, moving down the coast like this. So watch this play out. You'll see it right there. That's a backdoor cold front, and we do see that bring cooler temperatures for a day or two there. And then we return to the warm in the east, cold in the west pattern until we get towards like the 20th and beyond, where we do get some cold in the east. And it even looks like we're warming up in the west. So this might be shaping up for an overall cooler pattern in the east as time goes on. Now, looking at the GFS model, again, cold in the east, warm in the west for a little bit before we move back into that more warm in the east, cold in the west pattern. But look at this. Major cool down here for the 17th, 18th, 19th, especially when comparing to the European model. And that one's long lived. This one starts like the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, maybe some hanging on for the East Coast. We warm up a lot briefly, and then cooler air looks to be back on the way. The East Coast is staying warmer there towards the end of October. It's kind of struggling, but this is trying to throw colder air into the east. But look at this, guys. Look at this separation. Warmer down here, cooler down here. It doesn't get any more neutral PNA than that. I mean, that is crazy. Looks like a car battery. Guys, you got the plus and the minus. This is completely split right down the middle. Pretty crazy stuff. It's going to be a battle of this PNA out west. I think that's what's going to dictate this pattern. So as long as it's indecisive, that's kind of how the pattern in the east is going to be as a reflection of that. We're really going to have a lot of back and forth. If we get cold in the west, it is going to warm back up in the east. But if we get a more purely warm in the west pattern that wants to lock in and actually hang around, that's when we're going to get the more long-lived cold in the east. And that is the way I see the entire upcoming pattern for at least the next few weeks. So with all that being said, we upload every single day. Be sure to subscribe. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.